During our family gathering for dinner, my husband announced to the whole group that he was leaving me for my sister. Their secret relationship had been going on for years. I just gave a slight nod and replied, "Go ahead and look at your emails immediately." The expressions on their faces when the truth started sinking in were priceless. Hi there, everyone. I appreciate you joining me for this. It has taken me quite some time to reach a place where I could even discuss it openly. For ages, the words felt lodged in my throat, like a tight lump of hurt and disloyalty. Yet I realized that many of you could be dealing with your own hidden struggles, and perhaps sharing this might offer you a bit of encouragement. Before diving in, I'd like to hear where you're tuning in from. What city are you in? Drop it in the comments if you want. I'm Kesha Sterling, and I work as a digital forensics expert. Basically, I specialize in uncovering secrets buried in devices like computers and smartphones. I piece together online histories and trace digital footprints. I'm effective at it thanks to my systematic approach, persistence, and ability to spot details that slip past others. I could never have imagined that my biggest investigation would involve my own relationship. Everything unraveled on a cool Sunday in October, right at my dad's 65th birthday meal. The home buzzed with that warm, usual family bustle. The savory scent of Mom's honey-glazed ham and sweet potatoes filled the space, blending with the fresh-baked carrot cake I'd made, sitting on the kitchen counter. Giggles floated from the living room where my cousins were glued to the football game, and the low hum of talks formed a melody I'd grown up with. It seemed like the ideal snapshot of togetherness, of everyday life, a total illusion. I recall glancing at my husband Brandon from the other side of the packed dinner table. As a pediatric anesthesiologist, he struck me as a kind, caring person, or at least that's what I'd thought over our 7 years together. He had the crowd hooked, as always, with a tale about a challenging operation that held everyone's attention. Then he lifted his spoon and lightly chimed it against his wine glass. The sharp, echoing tone sliced through the din. "I've got something to share," he declared. The room went quiet in an instant. Every gaze shifted to him. Drawing on my work instincts, I examined his features, even in that tense instant. I caught the faint shake in his grip as he set the spoon aside. His eyes darted briefly to my younger sister, Sasha, before locking onto a point high on the distant wall. My pulse didn't quicken. It thumped with a deliberate, weighted steadiness in my torso, the steady rhythm of a secret I'd borne solo for 6 painful months. Brandon drew in a breath. His tone grew more solid, polished from practice. "Kesha and I are splitting up." A wave of shocked inhales rippled across the table. Mom's palm pressed to her heart. Aunt Vivian murmured, "Oh dear." Dad's bushy brows furrowed deeply. His look was one of bewilderment. "I hadn't meant to reveal it like this," Brandon went on, acting the role of the sorrowful, hesitant partner. "But with us all here," he trailed off, letting the surprise linger. Then came the ultimate crushing revelation. "One more thing," he said. He stretched over the table, beyond the rolls and the sauce dish, and clasped Sasha's hand. "My sister, the spirited and striking younger one. Sasha and I have developed deep feelings for each other." The hush that ensued was total, so profound that the fridge's soft buzz from the kitchen was audible. It shattered only with Mom's stunned murmur, "Oh my God." And suddenly, every pair of eyes in the room fixed on me. They anticipated it. They braced for the outburst, the sobs, the shouts, the finger-pointing, perhaps even the theatrical smash of Mom's fine dishes against the wall. They wanted me to fit their scripted drama as the stunned, frantic, devastated spouse, but I refused to deliver. Instead, I met each stare steadily. I nodded evenly, drank some water, and spoke the 9 words that would shatter their perfect scheme. "Everyone, please check your emails now." Brandon's assured grin faltered. Uncertainty crossed his features. "Emails?" he questioned, his confidence cracking. "What about them?" "I forwarded them moments before we ate," I answered calmly, retrieving my phone. "They ought to be in your inboxes already." With that, the tale they believed they controlled slipped from their grasp. It became my narrative. It's intriguing how our brains process things. In that frozen, astonished space, as relatives tentatively grabbed their devices, my thoughts drifted 8 years earlier to a fundraiser ball for the Children's Hospital of Atlanta. The venue glittered with elegance, packed with influential folks in high-end outfits. I attended on behalf of my cybersecurity company, which had recently contributed an upgraded protection setup to the facility. And there he was, Brandon, looking sharp, yet a tad awkward in his formal suit. He wasn't chatting up the big contributors. He lingered in a secluded spot. Till he spoke to a young girl in a wheelchair, drawing out peals of laughter that had her giggling uncontrollably. There was this warm glow around him, an authentic warmth that felt both scarce and sincere. He shared that he worked as a pediatric anesthesiologist. He guided kids into slumber ahead of operations. He clasped their hands and became the initial sight, greeting them upon awakening. How could anyone resist a guy like that? Our bond sparked right away, fierce and electric. That evening, we chatted endlessly about all sorts of topics, profound and trivial alike. Exactly 1 year on, we tied the knot in a cozy, beautiful gathering in my folks' backyard beneath the ancient, wide-branching oak I'd scaled in my youth. Those early days were magical, the sort depicted in films that seemed too perfect to exist. We snapped up a craftsman house needing work in the North Atlanta outskirts and devoted weekends to it, splattered with paint and wood shavings, transforming it side by side. We'd bicker about hues for the walls and chuckle until we ached. His physician's routine was grueling. The extended shifts came with the territory, yet he invariably carved out moments for our life together. I recall a brutal stretch at the office once. A key project stalled out, leaving me utterly drained and hopeless. I dragged myself through the door late on a Friday, bone-tired and on the verge of crumbling. The place was pitch black, and briefly, my spirits dropped, assuming he was out. Then I spotted it. A path of flickering tea light stretching from the entryway across the den and spilling onto the patio. He'd arranged cushions, a soft throw, and a stargazing scope. He'd assembled a hamper with my go-to Napa Valley Cabernet and chunks of artisanal Gouda. We lingered there beneath the night sky for hours, and he simply enveloped me, absorbing my words. He skipped any attempts to solve my woes. He merely shouldered the load alongside me. He'd tuck messages on my computer lid. Enjoy your day. Love you. He whipped up amazing brunches on Sundays, his off-key crooning filling the air as he turned flapjacks. I'd never experienced such security, such tenderness, such profound affection in my entire existence. That's the partner I chose. That's the world we crafted as a duo, and that's the recollection I held fast to. The bedrock I trusted as unshakable, yet it rested on shifting dunes. The initial fissure in that base emerged 3 years back. Back then, it masqueraded as kinship. My sibling Sasha had forever been the wandering type. As I focused on forging a profession and a steady existence, she wandered aimlessly. She abandoned university on 2 occasions. She bounced between locales, New York, Miami, Chicago, and switched jobs with bewildering speed. She chased some elusive goal but rarely grasped it. So when she rang me in tears from a Chicago depot, following yet another flop in her self-discovery quest, my chest tightened with sorrow. She was penniless, isolated, and broken. Head back here, I urged, to Atlanta. Crash with us till you're steady again. I brought it up with Brandon that same night. He paused, and I ought to have heeded that more closely. He perched on the counter, skimming through his med texts. "You positive about this, Keisha?" he queried, eyes still down. "Bringing another person into our space, even family like your sister, could alter things around here." "She's blood, Bran," I shot back, a touch guarded. "No other options for her. Kin looks out for kin. It'll wrap up in a few months tops." At last, he glanced my way, offering that gentle grin that invariably softened my stance. "All right," he agreed. "Your call, naturally." What began as a brief 2-month stint dragged on to half a year. Sasha landed a gig at a nearby gallery soon enough. but insisted Atlanta's steep housing costs outpaced her slim paycheck. "I'm stashing cash, Kay. Swear," she'd insist. "Need just a bit more time." Truth be told, initially, it didn't bother me. I'd longed to reconnect with my sister. Our hectic routines had pulled us apart. Her arrival seemed to brighten a void in our place I hadn't noticed before. Her effervescent whirlwind vibe clashed with my calm, organized ways. The house buzzed with energy. For a spell, it mirrored a vibrant, full household. I was thrilled to reclaim that bond with her. So innocent of me. I'd invited the serpent right into our midst. Hindsight delivers its own cruel agony, right? Every detail sharpens into focus. Those subtle clues, the warnings you brushed off as trivial, now stand in formation, arrowing toward the harsh reality. Once Sasha settled in, subtle changes crept in, but they unfolded gradually, stealthily, evading my awareness. Brandon picked up extra hours on duty, an urgent procedure, a tricky patient, an impromptu meeting. That's doctor life for you. The marathon days were expected. I never probed. I'd warm his meal in the range and turn in early. Sasha's outings for basics ballooned into marathon absences. A quick market run morphed into hours. Bumped into a buddy from way back. She'd chirp, face rosy. They began sharing private quips, coded sayings, and sly looks over the dinner spread. That left me out entirely. There were moments when I'd step into the living room and catch them mid-conversation, only for the chatter to die away the instant I appeared. The atmosphere grew heavy, electric, like I'd stumbled upon a confidential exchange. Whenever I inquired about their discussion, the response came back identical and elusive. Nothing significant. I recall a backyard barbecue with the family. While fetching extra potato salad in the kitchen, my mom drew me aside. She gazed through the window, her brow furrowed. "You realize," she murmured softly, "Brandon and Sasha appear to hit it off splendidly." I glanced outdoors. Brandon was assisting Sasha with the badminton setup. He chuckled, his palm lightly on her shoulder as he demonstrated the proper grip on the racket. "Why wouldn't they?" I responded, truly baffled. "Isn't that great?" "Sure, it's wonderful." My mom gave a casual lift of her shoulders. Not all guys mesh well with their spouses' relatives. Count your blessings. Blessed. I figured I was fortunate. My spouse and sibling had formed a bond. The house buzzed with more energy. Even my closest pal, Dion, noticed. We were grabbing lunch when my cell buzzed. Sasha was ringing Brandon's phone, which he'd unwittingly left behind in my vehicle. This marked the third call from her that morning over some minor issue. Dion eyed me curiously as I picked up. Once I ended the call, she swirled her iced tea and remarked, "Kesha, watch yourself." "Watch out for what?" I chuckled. "I wouldn't allow my sister to grow so cozy with my partner," she stated bluntly. I felt nearly insulted. "Dion, that's not the case. Sasha's simply needy. She admires him. Plus, it's Brandon." The unspoken point hung there. Brandon would never deceive me. He was far too upright, too loyal, too principled. I reminded myself to avoid becoming the suspicious, envious spouse. If he and Sasha quieted down upon my arrival in a room, it must have been mere chance. If he swiftly tucked away his phone upon a notification, it was likely professional matters he spared me from. After all, trust formed the bedrock of our union. I held on to that trust desperately, like a lifeline, oblivious to how deeply I was already sinking. The revelation happened by chance. No explosive showdown or nagging intuition, just ordinary routine. It was a Tuesday evening, 6 months prior to that disastrous family meal. Brandon was covering shifts at the medical center, and I was remote working to wrap up a document. I opted for delivery food, but my device had no charge. Without a second thought, I snatched his computer from the study. I launched the web browser. It defaulted to reloading his last tabs, and suddenly, his private inbox stared back at me, unlocked. I wasn't hunting for secrets. No doubts propelled me to pry. My hand paused over the touchpad to shut it down, but one email's header snagged my attention. Sender, Sasha, title, last night. A chill surged through me. Defying all logic screaming in my mind, I clicked, and the secure, balanced existence I'd nurtured crumbled to pieces. The message left no room for doubt, stark and graphic. "Last night was amazing," Sasha had typed. "You're all I can think about. I still sense your touch on my skin." The breath escaped me sharply. My focus tunneled. I continued downward. His response followed, dispatched from his mobile that very afternoon. "We need to exercise caution," Brandon had noted. "I don't want to harm Kay. But you're on my mind constantly, too." I pressed on. I devoured the full exchange in a numb, nightmarish haze, as though dissecting documents for a job rather than confronting the ruin of my reality. The correspondence stretched back more than 2 years, predating her relocation to stay with us. Even from Chicago, they'd schemed, texted, dreamed up scenarios. Her relocation to Atlanta and residence in our place wasn't out of necessity. It was deliberate strategy. 2 years of betrayal, 2 years of clandestine encounters, veiled wording, fabrications, countless deceptions. They'd carried on practically in plain sight within these walls, possibly even sharing my own sheets. I snapped the lid shut, skipping the meal altogether. I remained planted in the shadows of his desk seat, time blurring into what seemed like eternity. The quiet of the home roared in my ears. All the joyful recollections from those recent 2 years now carried a stain, corrupted. Each extended shift at the clinic, each chore Sasha handled, each subtle look I'd brushed off, it all aligned with brutal precision. When Brandon returned that evening, I scanned his features for traces of the unfamiliar figure I'd unearthed. Any hint that this individual who pecked my brow and inquired about my routine was identical to the one penning those notes to my sibling. Yet he appeared unchanged. He offered his familiar, kind grin. His gaze remained soft and caring. "Everything all right?" he queried, picking up on my quietness. "Rough work day." "Just worn out," I answered, my tone echoing empty and remote, even to me. He acknowledged with a nod, utterly unaware. And as I observed him navigate our space, our routine with such effortless poise, all the while harboring this horror, uncovering that hidden truth, shattered everything I thought I knew about the man I'd wed. He was nothing but an illusion. In that instant, I understood that mere awareness wouldn't suffice. I refused to play into their script by simply challenging them head on. Instead, I'd lean into my strengths. I'd record it all meticulously. For the following few weeks, I existed in a haze, oscillating between excruciating heartbreak and an eerie, detached chill. I'd jolt awake at 3 a.m., pulse racing wildly. The phrases from their messages seared themselves into my thoughts. How had I missed the signs so completely? By daylight, I functioned like a shadow, mechanically handling tasks. I headed to the office, cooked meals, engaged in dialogues that rang hollow and rehearsed. Sharing space with this utter unknown, I forced myself to act as if all was routine. Deep down, a tiny, frantic sliver of me clung to the possibility of some innocent rationale. Perhaps it was mere imagination. Perhaps they'd never crossed that line. Yet my ingrained investigative instincts, the very traits that excelled in my career, proved impossible to suppress. It began almost instinctively, then grew deliberate as I started compiling evidence. The initial clue was minor. While managing our online payments, I spotted a transaction on the shared credit card from a chic urban hotel, the sort ideal for lovers' escapes. It dated to a Wednesday afternoon when Brandon insisted he was tied up in consecutive operations. I captured an image of the bill. That became my first piece of proof. My probe turned systematic. I reactivated the phone's location tracking we'd set up long ago for security, then overlooked. When he announced late nights at the clinic, a swift glance revealed his marker at a eatery in a distant district, or even more pointedly, at coordinates I soon linked to Sasha's fresh residence. She'd relocated just a couple of months prior, a shift that now clicked as cover for their liaison. I cataloged each falsehood. I matched his professional calendar against financial records. I flagged those ostensibly chance encounters with Sasha that occurred far too often for pure happenstance. The facts accumulated, incriminating and isolating. Their infidelity wasn't just happening, they were careless about concealing it, almost as though they assumed I'd stay oblivious, or that it wouldn't matter if I didn't. The nadir hit roughly 2 months post-email revelation. Brandon announced a weekend symposium for doctors in Charleston, South Carolina. That icy dread twisted in my gut once more. A fast online query confirmed no event existed. Come Saturday dawn, I parked my vehicle opposite an upscale downtown inn, the very spot from the earlier charge. Patience lasted only 20 minutes. There they arrived in his ride, giggling carefree. He exited, circled to her side, chivalrously letting her out. His palm rested lightly on her lower back as they entered. A familiar, affectionate touch that twisted the knife. It played out like footage from a stranger's drama. I lifted my device, gripped firm, and snapped shots. Snap, snap, snap. I filed them away in my expanding electronic archive, a concealed directory on my laptop labeled Case 734. That evening he returned well after dark, spinning tales of the event's dull lectures, subpar cuisine, and the venue's woes. I simply acknowledged, warmed up the meal I'd readied, and absorbed his fabrications. "You seem wiped out," I remarked, gaze fixing on the subtle red streak marring his shirt collar. It matched her color exactly. I recognized it on sight. "Grueling day," he conceded, clasping my fingers over the tabletop. "Glad to be back." The warmth in his touch, the effortless deceit, the bold nerve, it nearly undid me. Softly, I withdrew. "Better turn in early," I suggested. As he dozed peacefully next to me that night, his breaths even and oblivious, a beast in my sheets, I resolved my path. I'd deny them the thrill of witnessing my anguish or fury. Not now. I'd persist in collecting irrefutable details. I'd fortify my dossier until it was ironclad, impervious, and beyond dispute. And eventually, the exposure wouldn't unfold as some chaotic, intimate clash they could wriggle from with more untruths. It would unfold openly. It would stand unchallenged, and it would happen entirely under my control. Following 3 months of this bifurcated existence, I opted to probe the boundaries. I wanted to gauge his response, to measure the betrayal's depth. I timed it like interrogating a resistant source in the field. I picked a vulnerable juncture, post-exhausting rotation, mellowed by a bit of vino. We'd settled into the veranda rocker one evening, breeze mild and inviting, a tableau echoing our blissful past. For a beat, it seemed authentic. "Maybe we ought to discuss Sasha," I ventured lightly, tone steady. I sensed his frame stiffen next to mine, a subtle but seismic adjustment. "What's on your mind regarding her?" he replied warily. "You two have grown awfully tight recently," I observed, studying his features under the faint glow from the lanterns. He let out a laugh, though it came off strained and brittle. "She's family, Kay. Your sibling, after all." "We're almost there. She's like family." "No, I mean intimately close, Brandon," I replied, swiveling to meet his stare directly. I locked eyes with him, channeling all my unspoken awareness into that intense gaze. "Do you have anything you'd like to share?" For a brief instant, I caught a spark in his eyes, a hint of alarm, acknowledgement, maybe even remorse. In that optimistic, naive second, I imagined he might admit the decent guy I'd wed was still alive inside, smothered beneath layers of deceit. But just as swiftly, the facade returned, his features stiffened, and his gaze grew icy. "I have no idea what you're suggesting, Kesha, and I don't like it," he replied icily, his tone laced with superiority. "Sasha's dealing with a tough time. She often turns to me for guidance. As a pal, as her sister's husband, if you're feeling threatened, that's your issue. Perhaps you ought to reflect on why you're abruptly so skeptical." Gaslighting. A textbook tactic flawlessly delivered. The swift rejection, the twist of the story, the shift of fault, portraying me as the unstable, envious spouse. It was so polished, so habitual. It nearly shook my confidence. Nearly. Yet I possessed the evidence. I had the images. I had the facts secured in File 734. I merely regarded him and nodded deliberately. "You're correct," I murmured softly. "It might be all in my head." He eased up right away, convinced of his triumph. He draped an arm over my shoulders and drew me nearer. "Listen," he whispered gently. "You and I are solid, never question that." I allowed his embrace, my frame tense and unresponsive. I sensed only a profound, freezing void. My spouse wasn't merely unfaithful. He was a schemer, and this transcended a mere romance. It was a clash of truths, and I alone realized it had commenced. My botched try at a gentle probe appeared to rouse them. It felt like I'd stirred a wasp's hive, prompting their aggressive retaliation. A barrage of deceit so brutally ingenious it bordered on admirable. Sasha began phoning me often. "Hey, sis," she'd say. "How about manicures this Saturday? Or there's a fresh display at the museum. We could check it out side by side." Her words oozed fake, cloying cheer that set my teeth on edge. She aimed to craft a fresh storyline, one depicting us as inseparable siblings, rendering my doubts even more implausible. The nadir came when she attempted to play matchmaker. During an art showing, she tugged me aside to introduce an unattached painter. "Kesha toils endlessly," she remarked with feigned sympathy. "Brandon and I agree she deserves more outings, some real enjoyment. Though the viciousness of it, steering me toward strangers while betting my partner, was breathtaking. She wasn't simply betraying, she was taunting. At the same time, Brandon intensified his fabrications. They even enlisted my mother as a tool in their scheme. I'll always recall that phone call, her tone brimming with delight. "All right, sweetie. I've got news, but act shocked, okay?" she instructed. "What's up, Mom?" I inquired, dread pooling in my gut. "Sasha stopped by earlier, and she hinted that she and Brandon are arranging a major anniversary gift for you. Maybe a getaway." Ice surged through my veins. Our milestone was 4 months off. "She's kept it hush-hush," my mom went on, utterly unaware. "But she said they've collaborated for months, gathering to sort every aspect. Isn't it adorable how your sibling and spouse bond like that for you?" Months of scheming. Sessions that dragged my parent into their illusion. They had evolved beyond infidelity. They were methodically reshaping our household's truth, deceiving our circle, stranding me in their tangled falsehoods. This wasn't impulsive desire. It was a plot. That conversation solidified a shift within. The final traces of my pain and grief evaporated, replaced by a sharp, unyielding fury that cleared my mind. My aim extended past revelation. I intended to shatter their fabricated world, fragment by fragment, before every soul they'd fooled. They sought to dominate the tale. Very well. I'd soon deliver a story they'd etch into memory. I chose to escalate. Enough with veiled cues and quiet watching. I required proof of his limits. One evening, prior to his arrival, I intentionally scattered clues on the countertop. Traces of his disloyalty, a copy of the lodging bill, select captures of their milder yet damning exchanges. I positioned them beside his correspondence, impossible to overlook. Then I sat in the den, pulse racing, braced for the explosive clash that would unveil it all. Time dragged on. I heard his entrance, the chime of keys, the shuffle as he, checking the mailbox. Quiet. An oppressive, drawn-out quiet. At last, he stepped into the sitting room. His face showed no rage or remorse. It was serious, somber. He resembled someone shouldering a tremendous weight. "We have to discuss this," he stated, settling into the chair opposite mine. "You're right, we should," I replied. An odd wave of ease swept through me. The pretense had finally ended. I've uncovered something disturbing, he went on, his tone strained with apparent anguish. He set a file down on the low table separating us. I reached for it, bracing for the clues I'd planted. But what emerged was a bundle of printed messages. Correspondence from my coworker, Marcus, and myself. Harmless notes on due dates and tech problems, yet they'd been manipulated. He'd cherry-picked snippets, stripped away backgrounds, and stitched them back into seeming playful, affectionate, damning dialogues. He'd fabricated signs of betrayal to condemn me. "I know about you and Marcus," Brandon declared, his words laden with staged grief. "How long has this lasted, Kay? Those endless evenings at work. It all clicks now." The moment felt so bizarre, so deviously timed that I nearly chuckled. This went beyond evasion. It was an advance assault. He was building his excuse. He was crafting a tale in which my alleged unfaithfulness had sorrowfully driven him toward my sibling. He was positioning himself as the sufferer. "Marcus and I have nothing," I responded, my tone eerily calm. "Those exchanges are strictly professional, and you're aware of that." "They appear quite personal to me," he shot back, shaking his head with feigned regret. "I simply can't fathom why you'd betray us like this." The deliberate cruelty of it sent shivers through me. Right then I realized a straight-on challenge wouldn't succeed. He and Sasha had poured too much into their deceptions. They'd refuse, sidestep, and twist facts until their made-up version became the norm. They'd destroy me utterly to protect their skins. "I believe," he added, grasping my hand with scripted worry, "we ought to spend some time separately. This isn't beneficial for anyone involved." A flood of ease crossed his features as I didn't withdraw. I followed the script. I allowed him to keep holding on. "A break might help," I murmured softly. He gripped tighter, his expression one of profound empathy. "This isn't about pointing fingers," the expert deceiver demonstrated live. "Occasionally, folks simply grow distant." He hesitated, then landed the closing, flawlessly scripted remark. "Sasha has invited me to use her spare room temporarily as we sort this out." Naturally, she had. Their scheme meshed seamlessly. He took my subdued agreement as defeat. He believed he'd triumphed. He couldn't have been more mistaken. While he savored his cleverness, I was already shifting gears in my mind toward the next stage of my probe. The rules had shifted, and they remained clueless about the storm I was preparing to release. The day Brandon hauled his belongings away ranked among the oddest in my existence. He loaded a few bags, humming a light-hearted, unaware melody, behaving as though it were a routine, friendly parting. Sasha arrived to assist, casting me glances of mock sympathy and understanding that nearly drove me to yell. They were utterly assured in their petty play, completely convinced of their plot. "Take whatever time you require, sis," she uttered, enveloping me in a stiff, insincere embrace. The instant their vehicle departed, I requested the day off from my job. As they imagined me secluded at home, drowning in sorrow, I was heading into the city center. My goal was the workspace of Ray Jenkins, a private detective once suggested by a fellow employee. He was a straightforward, weathered former officer who focused on cheating spouses and had given evidence in countless divorce hearings. I positioned myself opposite him at his cluttered workstation and handed over my materials. No guesses, no assumptions, just a full compilation. He examined my records, the sequences, the money trails, the position logs, the images, emitting a soft whistle of astonishment and respect. "Ma'am," he remarked, peering above his spectacles, "typically people approach me with a vague notion and some fuzzy snapshots. You've delivered a full-blown case." "That's my approach," I answered, "though rarely in my own affairs. I'm not seeking your watching services. I want an expert opinion. What do I hold, and what more do I require?" He verified my intuitions. The proof was strong, yet a shrewd legal mind might dismiss each element separately. The overnight at the inn, a work outing, the evenings close to her place, assisting with a dripping tap. Motive, Jenkins noted, prodding the file with a sturdy digit. That's the key you need. If you can demonstrate they intentionally schemed to mislead you and everyone else, your stance bolsters greatly. It's beyond the romance. It's the plot. I departed his space with fresh determination. My following visit was to Atlanta's premier divorce lawyer, a keen, refined lady by the name of Celeste Dubois. She scrutinized my materials with surgical accuracy. "This stands out as remarkable evidence, Keisha," she remarked, her tone soft yet steadying. "Typically, people come to me with tears and blame. You've arrived with solid proof, both in the literal sense and beyond. What should I anticipate?" I inquired. "A positive resolution, without question," she outlined. "However, keep in mind that Georgia follows a no-fault divorce framework. The judge won't penalize them for the infidelity on legal grounds. Their unfaithfulness carries little weight in dividing assets, except if you demonstrate monetary deceit. I'm not seeking courtroom penalties," I stated firmly, my tone unyielding like iron. "Nor am I after extra funds. I need the reality to be recognized. I demand their story be torn apart. I want all to perceive them as they truly exist." Celeste Dubois regarded me intently for an extended pause. Then she extended a subtle, perceptive grin. "Indeed," she noted, settling into her seat, "public perception's tribunal can deliver harsher verdicts than any official ruling." Her statement hit like a bolt of lightning. A fabricated tale in the open called for an open revelation, and I grasped precisely the method and timing for unveiling it. Fortified by expert guidance, I expanded my probe. It transcended mere recording of the liaison. It targeted revealing the motive, the plot, and the revelations surpassed my darkest fears. The initial significant revelation emerged from our shared savings. I spotted a pattern of consistent matching deductions over the past 12 months. They appeared as cash pulls for home costs. Yet further scrutiny revealed they matched inflows of identical sums into a secret account Brandon had established secretly. He had methodically siphoned our prospects to support his alternative existence. This added fiscal disloyalty to the pile. It went beyond wounding my emotions. It violated our joint existence, our alliance. Visions of leisure years, journeys, stability. He was pilfering it right out from under me. Yet the most shocking, heart-searing find surfaced in his cloud repository. Similar to many, his device auto-saved all content. Images, memos, chats. He wasn't tech-fluent and had overlooked it entirely. One evening, using a passcode I'd retained for ages, I accessed it and uncovered their confidential exchanges. Scanning their words felt like dousing my spirit in corrosive liquid. They described me with harsh, belittling language. They ridiculed my faith, my efforts, my traits. They chuckled over my complete unawareness. One dialogue seared into my memory forever. Brandon typed, "She's so immersed in her job, she hasn't picked up on anything. We could likely pull it off right on the kitchen surface while she's clacking away in the study, and she wouldn't catch a sound." Sasha responded within a minute. "Haha. She might even express gratitude for us choosing for her. She was never cut out for genuine partnership regardless. Perpetually so grave. She was never cut out for genuine partnership." The phrase reverberated through the hushed space. Every instance I'd backed his grueling profession, handled our household, rejoiced in his advancements, tended to him during illnesses. It reduced to that. A punchline, a shortcoming. Absorbing their venom shifted something deep within. The detachment that had shielded me for months crumbled, replaced by a sharp, illuminating fury. This exceeded mere treachery. It constituted deliberate psychological torment. It formed a deliberate scheme to erode my sense of truth, to depict me as naive, to safeguard their egotistical facade as lovers who just tumbled into romance. I carefully archived each communication, each money shift, each falsehood. My collection evolved past mere infidelity. It chronicled a deliberate, spiteful scheme of deceit and malice. Separation loomed unavoidable, yet it would unfold by my rules, and public scrutiny's arena stood ready to convene. Right as I wrapped up gathering my proofs, my device buzzed. It was a note from my mom. My pulse raced wildly. "Gather at home for supper. Your dad's turning 65 this Sunday. Brandon and Sasha are set. Join us, dear. Avoid discomforting your dad. Avoid discomforting." The sarcasm hung so heavy it nearly suffocated me. But scanning the words, a gradual smirk crossed my lips. They remained clueless. They'd unwittingly provided the ideal platform, the perfect crowd. Every player would gather in a single space, anticipating my role as the broken, lamentable spouse, the uneasy outsider in their budding romance. They assumed I'd adhere to their plot. The following 3 days passed in a haze of sharp, concentrated readiness. I ceased being merely a spouse or sibling. I became an advocate gearing up for life's pivotal hearing. I avoided cramming all the material into one chaotic bundle. That would overwhelm. Instead, I tailored my delivery. I crafted distinct, focused messages for each vital relative. For my dad, a tailored no-frills, straightforward guy, I gathered all the monetary proof. I added the records from our shared savings, along with the ones from Brandon's hidden account, emphasizing the periods when he took funds from my father for a clever venture, while secretly siphoning our shared resources. For my mom, who placed family bonds over everything, I zeroed in on Sasha's betrayal. I attached images of texts where Sasha pretended to assist with mom's chores as an excuse to rendezvous with Brandon. I also included the exchange about the anniversary gift, revealing how they exploited my mother's affection and faith as props in their scheme. For my aunts, uncles, and cousin Germaine, I outlined the targeted falsehoods directed at each, illustrating a consistent scheme of deceit that impacted the whole clan. The crowning element was a comprehensive email, an exhaustive compilation delivered solely to my inbox. It encompassed it all, the complete sequence of events, every bit of fiscal and online proof, plus a thorough, detached summary of how I uncovered it. This served as my guide, my blueprint amid the turmoil sure to erupt after my exposure. On Sunday morning, I awoke feeling an unusual, profound calm. No nerves or dread, only resolve. I got ready with intention, selecting a plain blue outfit that Brandon once said he adored. I arranged my hair, added subtle cosmetics, and wore the pearl studs from my grandmother, a fragment of her resilience, a touch of my familial legacy. As I prepared to head out, my phone pinged with a message from Sasha, simply verifying you'll be here this evening. Dad would be crushed if you skipped. We're kin, remember. No need to complicate things. The bold, effortless nerve of it almost shattered my poise. I inhaled deeply, my palm on the doorknob. Soon their meticulously built illusion would collapse beneath the burden of undeniable recorded facts. I responded with one term: coming. I pulled up to my parents' home punctually, bearing a from-scratch carrot cake, my dad's go-to, and a neatly packaged present. Crossing the threshold, the customary noises and aromas of the clan assembly enveloped me. Briefly, it resembled a typical Sunday, yet I recognized it differed. It marked the close of a chapter. Brandon and Sasha had arrived early, positioned together on the den couch. This marked their debut as an overt pair in a relative's context. They were probing boundaries, assessing responses. They glanced my way upon my arrival, their countenances blending sympathy and unease. My mother enveloped me in a firm, anxious embrace. "Oh, Keisha, I'm relieved you made it," she murmured. "This matters greatly to your dad." The meal unfolded in excruciating, forced routine. We savored Mom's roast. We chatted on neutral ground, the climate, my cousin's fresh arrival, my father's post-work intentions. I joined in automatically like a specter amid the banquet, observing Brandon and Sasha share subtle, covert grins over the spread. They awaited their cue, the one they'd scripted and practiced. When my mother began distributing sweets, the instant arrived. Brandon cleared his voice and clinked his utensil on his goblet. Silence fell across the space. It echoed the signal he'd employed for each major milestone in our shared past: our betrothal, our initial home, his recent career leap. Instances that formerly sparked joy in me now seemed like phases in an extended, intricate fabrication. He launched into his address, the one I'd anticipated, phrases on tough choices, on unforeseen romance, on hearts dictating beyond control. While he continued, my device vibrated softly in my bag. I peeked subtly. It signaled my mail dispatch tool: failed dispatch, system glitch. A surge of raw alarm coursed through. I inspected promptly. The precisely scheduled messages, the core of my strategy, hadn't dispatched. A brief network disruption with restoration timeline unclear. My veins turned to ice. My scheme depended utterly on those dispatches. Absent them, I'd appear precisely as they foresaw: the stunned, weeping spouse lacking substantiation, authority, just a wild tale they could brush aside with ease. Brandon approached the peak of his monologue. His grip now visibly clasped Sasha's over the surface. My relatives observed, faces shifting from surprise to unease and compassion. Compassion aimed at me. I had mere moments to choose: retreat in defeat or challenge him solely on my testimony versus theirs. Both paths unacceptable. Then Plan B surfaced in my thoughts. I'd stashed my computer in my bag as backup. The complete archive, the thorough compilation, stood sorted and primed. As Brandon delivered his closing line, "Sasha and I have fallen in love," and every gaze pivoted to me, bracing for my collapse. I was in motion. Steadily, deliberately, I delved into my bag. I unveiled the computer under the tablecloth. I accessed my correspondence app. I fastened the primary document holding each fragment of proof. And I included every relative's email in the distribution list. As the awkward hush in the room dragged on, I hit the send button. Then I glanced up, locking eyes with my husband's smug expression, and addressed the stillness. "If you would, please," I requested, my words carrying an unexpected sharpness that caught me off guard. "Take a look at your inboxes immediately." What followed was a strangely poetic sequence. The notifications pinged and vibrated across the dining area as my message arrived. Puzzled glances passed between them. My cousin Jermaine pulled it up first. His expression widened in shock while he scanned the contents. "I've attached extra background on Brandon's big reveal," I stated evenly, watching as Brandon's grin faded into growing dismay. "A few key documents I figured everyone ought to review." My dad checked next, his features hardening like gathering thunderclouds over his screen. "Holy hell," Jermaine muttered under his breath. Mom set her device aside, fingers trembling, her gaze shifting wildly from Sasha to me, a mix of incredulity and revulsion twisting her features. "What in the world? What's going on here? What have you done?" Sasha snapped, her complexion paling rapidly. Brandon groped for his cell. "It's the facts," I responded plainly. "The full story of your affair with my sibling, neatly compiled for easy reading. In invoices, chat logs, money trails. It's comprehensive." The atmosphere shifted to a denser quiet. No longer mere surprise, but the profound hush of exposure. It shattered only with sporadic intakes of breath or quiet oaths as folks uncovered more incriminating details. "Those chats were meant to stay confidential," Brandon stammered at last, flicking through the exchanges in a panic, his scripted tale of forbidden romance crumbling page by page. "You crossed a line. This violates our privacy." "On the contrary, I have every justification," I interrupted. My tone turned icy and detached, like delivering sworn testimony. "Those joint money profiles were accessible to both of us, and much of the data came from gadgets and profiles you routinely left unlocked in our common space. That's digital investigation, Brandon. It's my actual line of work." I turned to face the group. "You're set on dropping this bombshell this evening," I declared, my delivery steady and resolute. "You've staged the scene to shape the story. The star-crossed pair, the tough choice, the tidy split. You simply never anticipated I'd bring my version to the table. Mom recovered her composure first. She faced my sister, ashen and quivering with an anger I'd never witnessed in her. "Sasha, how could you betray your flesh and blood like this?" Sasha collapsed into sobs, falling back on her lifelong tactic. I didn't intend any pain. Things unfolded naturally. Love doesn't follow rules. But your correspondence shows you've been scheming for more than 2 years, Cousin Germain cut in, brandishing his phone, disgust etched across his features. That's no accident. That's calculated. The wave of outrage swelled. Aunt Vivian soothed Mom, who now stared at Sasha like an unfamiliar intruder. Uncle Walter, fresh from his accounting days, bombarded a dazed Brandon over the monetary inconsistencies. The hidden savings fund. Brandon mounted one final bid to salvage things, slipping into his doctor persona for defense. "Obviously, this is Kesha's method of coping with a tough shift," he intoned, with that patronizing detachment. "She spun this whole fantasy. Enough, Brandon." Dad's words cut sharp and frigid through the tension. He rose, commanding the space. "My girl doesn't invent proof. The fight was finished. Reality had triumphed. Following endless months of compiling, scrutinizing, and strategizing, no further words were required from me. The proof laid it all bare. I grabbed my bag and jacket, rising to my feet. "Time for me to head out," I murmured softly amid the strained quiet. "Dad, I'm truly sorry to spoil your celebration meal." He was there beside me without delay. "Let me see you to the door," he offered, his arm encircling my shoulders supportively. In the crisp evening breeze outside, he pulled me into a fierce embrace. "I had no clue about your ordeal," he rasped, emotion thickening his throat. "Why keep it from us longer?" "I had to piece it together myself first," I replied, resting against him, "and make sure the others grasped it fully, not merely believe me over them. I wanted them to witness the reality." Sliding into my vehicle and pulling onto the road, my muted phone suddenly blazed with non-stop family texts, outpourings of backing, astonishment, unity. I powered it down, savoring the quiet. After half a year of turmoil, a profound calm settled over me at last. The conflict had ended. You see, as I sped from that home, leaving the ruins of my former world behind, a profound liberation washed over me. For the first time in ages, I could draw a full breath, and I suspect many of you out there get precisely that sensation. If you're sticking around to hear the rest of what I went through, that truly touches me. It eases the isolation I've been carrying with all this. If it's no trouble, could you support me by hitting like on this video and dropping a simple 1 in the comments? It shows me you connected with it and that you're right here alongside me in this experience. Your encouragement means more than words can say. So go ahead and leave that 1 below, and I'll wrap up how everything turned out. Come morning, I submitted the divorce paperwork. The proceedings moved faster than I'd expected. Armed with the overwhelming proof I'd gathered, there wasn't any resistance. Brandon and Sasha's efforts to spin the story fell apart entirely, not amid a chaotic back and forth of accusations, but via the steady, unemotional laying out of the facts. The family turned away from them. My devastated mom informed Sasha she'd need years before she could bear facing her once more. Dad wouldn't even utter a word to Brandon. What they'd painted as an epic romance had morphed into a stark warning on the perils of lies. 3 months on, in the office of my lawyer, Celeste Dubois, as I inked the last of the separation documents, she inquired whether the resolution brought me any peace. "Satisfaction isn't the word," I answered straightforwardly, gazing at my name scrawled across the sheet that sealed the end of our union. "It's more like a sharp sense of understanding. I'd forged a profession out of exposing online traces of people's actions. I never dreamed my biggest investigation would chronicle the breakdown of my personal world. Yet ultimately, the very methods I relied on became my path to freedom. Careful recording accomplished what heated arguments could never achieve. It swapped out falsehoods for undeniable reality. That same day, I boxed up the remaining items from the home we had created side by side. The craftsman-style place, my former ideal haven, now resembled a tomb for faded recollections. Sorrow didn't wash over me. I just sensed completion. I relocated to a fresh apartment, a cozy, sunlit spot offering clear sights across the Atlanta horizon. With dusk falling and bathing my bare space in warm light, I settled on the ground beside my computer. I accessed file 734 for the very last occasion. I scanned the directories packed with hurt and disloyalty, then pulled the whole thing into the recycle bin. After that, I cleared it out completely. It marked the closing move in a saga that had eaten up almost 12 months of my existence. The day ahead would launch a fresh beginning, one I'd author solely on my conditions. And as the urban glow flickered to life, a profound assurance surged through me. I'd come through this just fine. Thanks. I appreciate you tuning in to the full account. Reliving it wasn't simple, but opening up lightens the load. If you face something comparable, or if anything here struck a chord, don't hesitate to add your perspective in the comments. You're far from isolated. And keep in mind, however bleak the shadows seem, you possess the inner power to uncover your reality. Stay well, and catch you next time